City Council meeting to order. City Recorder Krieger, please call roll.
Councilor Godusi. Councilor Hu.
Here.
Mayor Lube.
Here.
Councilor Robbins.
Here.
Councilor Schlack.
Here.
Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Councilor Wolf.
Here.
Youth Councilor Hellick.
Here. Thank you. If everyone will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Agenda items this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to public comment. If you would like to call in, please do so now to get into the queue. The phone number is 503-966-4101, and anyone wishing to present by video, please also log in. Anyone who wants to comment in the room, there is a sign-up sheet at the entrance of the room. We did receive one written comment by noon yesterday from Beverly Burke regarding 4th of July firework noise. We do not have anyone signed up in person. Mr. Vang, do we have any phone callers in the queue or anyone wishing to testify by video?
We do not.
Okay. We did that fairly quickly, so if someone hops on, can you let us know?
Yes.
Thank you so much. We will move on to community updates, and we will start with our police chief report with Chief McDonald. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Jamie McDonald, your police chief. And I'm happy to bring to you the dashboard for the month of June, but I'd like to start because obviously fireworks are a, no pun intended, hot topic due to the recent 4th of July events. And I brought those three charts or three graphs that are up there to just kind of show you recent years of calls for service on the 4th of July. So 2025 spiked up a bit, 55 calls that were fireworks related on the 4th of July. So it actually figured out to be half of our calls for service. We had 111 calls on the 4th, 55 of them were fireworks related. And then the middle one, the colored pie chart shows the different districts in the city where the calls were divided up, the percentage in which they were divided. So the big red pie piece is actually our 2 area, which is basically everything south of McDonald Street and east of 99. So McDonald and Bonita, that's all the 2 districts. So where the high school, where Cook Park is at, that accounted for the highest percentage of any of the districts in the city. I would concur that's probably accurate. When I was leaving the drone event, I was watching fireworks be launched off that were illegal. I tried to find 2 of those locations, was unable to on my way back to the office. But that underscores the difficulty that we have in finding some of the locations. I was looking at our call data and noticed that most of the calls that we got gave a general location instead of a specific street address. So when we get like an intersection, we can go to the intersection if we don't have a specific address, which in our community members' defense, they may not know where it's being launched from. They're saying, hey, it's in the area of, and they give an intersection location. So we go to the area, excuse me, attempt to locate where the fireworks are being launched off from, and then try to find the offenders, so to speak. And so you can see where the real spike in calls really started around 9 p.m. and shot up, again, no pun intended, shot up between 9 and really about 1 a.m. is where we really see the bulk of those calls come in. And that's when we're busiest, right, is during those times. So I thought it would be informative to highlight where our calls for service and where they really spike up during those hours. And we did end up getting some tips ahead of time from community members, went out and made contact with some folks. 2 people told us, hey, we're not going to launch off illegal stuff this year. And the officers that did those, I guess, educational opportunities went back to do compliance checks. And we're happy to report back that neither of the two that told them they were going to launch off were lighting anything off. The third one I didn't get any info on, so my guess is that they either didn't make contact or were unable to make contact or didn't have any reason to think that the people were doing anything. But two of the three that we got tips on said, hey, you won't have any problems from us. And we didn't, which is kind of nice. It's great to get compliance. And then we do have one investigation that we are working on that was some property damage, and we'll see. It sounds like it may get solved with a civil compromise, meaning that the property owners will work it out between themselves, because the property owner that had the damage doesn't want somebody to get arrested or anything like that. They just like their property to be paid for, the damage to be paid for. So we will work with both property owners to see how they can come up with something that's amenable to both of them. So we did not see the fireworks launched off, and nor did the property owner that had the damage, but it sounds like the one that caused it actually let them know. So it's always nice when we have that. Is there any question about fireworks or anything that I could answer in that regard?
Did you issue any citations this year?
No.
Any additional questions? Yeah, Councilor Gaducy?
Anecdotally, without having the data in front of you, do you feel that having the outside traffic controllers help improve your community outreach and things like that on the 4th of July?
It did help in that we were able to have officers that could focus on going out when we got the fireworks calls to try and actually go and make contact. The challenge, as you can see, is when it spikes to have so many at certain times, and then you can see that relatively equally distributed around the city. So we did get a chance to get to many of those calls or get into the general area. A lot of them we were unable to find where they were coming from. So did we have more ability to respond? Yes, I would say that we did. I was talking to two of our officers who apparently it's their jam. They were jazzed to go out and see if they could find people launching off illegal fireworks. And really, so one of the things that we did is about a week before the 4th, we sent out a refresher. Hey, here's a reminder. Here's the statutes. Here's the municipal code that we have that we can use as tools. Here's how you use it. And so they had the tools that they needed to be able to go out and do it. So these two were excited to go out and try and find folks. And one of them I was talking to after we got back, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. He'd come back to use the restroom, and I said, hey, have you had any luck? He's like, no. He goes, God, I can't actually find anybody with like a Roman candle in their hand, is what he said. And I said, yeah, I know. It's challenging unless you have a specific address. And he said that he only had one call that he had taken that actually had a specific address, and when he got there was nobody launching this stuff off. So it just underscores the challenge that we have, because it spikes so much during that 4-hour period, and then just trying to get there to do it. So we did have 2 officers at least that were specifically, I don't know if I want to say excited, but they were motivated to go out there and not just remind people, but actually hold people accountable. So that was the mission this year. The tools that we have are, I believe, effective, but we just were unable to be in the right place at the right time.
Is this like a topic at, police conferences at all? Like, is this something where any city is leading on best practices? Like, I think of technology and drone use and observations and those sorts of things. Are there any communities trying new ways and succeeding at holding community members breaking the law accountable?
The interesting thing about that, Mayor, is that around the country, the laws governing fireworks are so different, right? So I try to really focus, what are we doing here in Oregon? And there's some communities that there's a zero tolerance for fireworks where fireworks are just straight up, they're illegal. Can't sell, buy, or possess fireworks in that community. So they have their own municipal code, similar to what what ours is, where if you're even the property owner that's allowing or is in possession of the property, you don't even have to know that the fireworks are being launched off. If somebody's launching illegal fireworks off of your property, you can be cited for it under our municipal code. So in other communities, they have similar types of things, but maybe a full prohibition. And so the communities are on board with it and fully aware, and they call ahead, let people know. So sometimes they have a little better, more effective enforcement. I was talking to some other chiefs here in Washington County, and they experience the same problems that we do, where they have that huge spike in calls during a 4 or 5 hour time frame, and it's just difficult to actually find them unless we have a specific actual address. And that's where it's super beneficial for us. So if somebody knows somebody's launching it off, they know what the actual address is when they call in, it's very helpful. But as I looked at all the fireworks calls, the vast majority of them said a general location rather than a specific address. So that's probably the biggest challenge. So, I mean, I guess the plea that I could give to the community is when you see somebody launching those off, if you can get a physical address or get close to a physical address, it's very helpful for us. It makes it much easier for us to actually respond directly to that location rather than having to get to the area and go, okay, now I'm in the general area, and then try and figure out where it's at. 'Cause that's what I did coming back from the drone show. I got into the Applewood neighborhood, which is right next to the high school, right? And I could tell it was coming from somewhere in there. And I drove around, and Mayor, you know how that neighborhood is. It kind of loops around a little bit, and I stopped. Boom, another one went, and I drove around the block and came down the street and that I thought it came from, and then couldn't find anything. So,
I also know who you're talking about because they light them off every year. I used to live in that neighborhood.
well,
and,
maybe
yeah.
I could get the address from you next year,
Yeah.
and we'll.
I could tell you a general area because it was a neighborhood across.
I can as well.
Yeah, that's the problem. Okay.
So anyway, so that is the challenge, although it wasn't for a lack of trying this year. We actually did put, like I said last year, that we would do better, and we did put a lot more effort towards it this year, just unable to issue those citations. We're going to keep working at it, though.
Any additional questions? Yeah, Councilor Shaw.
Maybe not necessarily a question, but going from in 2024, the 23 calls to the 55 calls in 2025, I'm wondering just how much, because there was quite a few fires that had already started, both in Oregon, but also, of course, in California, the devastation that hit there. But is that also something too that working with TVFNR, you've got a communication like that night to ensure that if it's a very warm, windy night, that if there are fires because of these illegal fireworks are going to be put out? And
Yeah, and I think that I really think that our community is getting better at recognizing when we've had those high fire danger years. 2021 was the year we had the highest number, and that was the year right after we had that horrible heat wave. And so you can see we have the highest number of calls, but then last year we only had 23. The interesting thing is that what I heard for this area, or for Tigard, is that TVFNR responded to 2 fire calls, and that their actual calls for service on the 4th were not outside of what they would consider a normal day. They had 26 calls for service on the 4th, and 20 is their average. And they said that 6 is not considered an abnormal day. And they had 2 calls that were fire related. But they don't think that either of them were fireworks related. We had one that may have been a fire call, but it was not determined to be one when we arrived. So fortunately, low fire activity this year on the 4th. Fortunately, the heat wave is hitting now rather than in the days directly before. I think it's helpful. Any other questions on fireworks? All right, next slide, please. This one's going to be rather busy on the board, but what I wanted to show you, and you have it in your packet there, that should show there's some that are highlighted in red, and what I really want to show is the month of June is 2,071. That's 2,071 calls for service. The reason I bring that up is having over 2,000 calls in 1 month, calls for service, is rather unusual. You can see if you look through that graph over the last roughly 10 years, you'll see that there's only a handful of months that hit above 2,000 calls for service. And I think that's a notable thing for us to take a look at. And so that's why I put up all those numbers. And I know there's a few numbers folks in here, so it probably is kind of fun to look at. But I look at that because it's very informative to tell us when our busy times of year are, when we need to focus more effort at certain during certain seasons. And you can see that summertime is generally pretty darn busy for our officers. So 2,071 for the month of June was a pretty significant number for us. Any questions on that? Next slide, please. And I will note that on this one, I did notice an error in the middle. Total dispatched calls should be 2,071, not 2,017. Got some numbers transposed there. My apologies. And so that actually changed the workload percentage for the societal calls to 69.5%, down from 71. Notably, that number is still the highest percentage that we've ever had for the societal type calls. And as a reminder, those are our calls that involve our homeless individuals, people that are experiencing mental health crisis or behavioral health incidents, disorderly conduct, things like that. And so that was, of those calls, it was just under 70% of our call load for the month of June was those societal calls. And then the heat map there on the bottom just kind of shows you where the hot spots are. And I like to bring that up every few months to show you that it's really very consistent. The biggest one there where it says 420, that's City Hall. That doesn't mean we have all those calls that come here, but a lot of calls come in here, or people come into the lobby as a reminder, and then the officer responds here, so it gets attached to this location generally until the officer writes the report, because this comes out of our CAD system, so it's where we get the call for service. And you can see where it's pretty evenly balanced around the city to include River Terrace. We're starting to see more calls out there. A lot of those are traffic crashes and construction site thefts, things like that are the types of things we see out there. And then of course the 99 corridor has its own hot areas as well. And then at the top of the page there, that just shows the calls for service and then self-initiated. And last month we talked about how self-initiated activity continues to increase. And there you go, another month, even though we had such a high month for calls for service, we did also increase our self-initiated activity as well. So we continue to do those things. And like I said, I have a few theories on the self-initiated stuff, but there is a little friendly competition between shifts on who can make the most traffic stops, which is, I think that's kind of cool that they're competing with each other, and that's balancing out throughout the time of day so that we're getting more traffic enforcement around the clock rather than maybe just in the overnight hours when officers are not quite as busy. And then I wanted to share a note that was sent in by a community member to the Ask Tired Police. I should have brought my readers, sorry. This community member says, I just wanted to say thank you for the support and protection during the No Kings protests. I'm sure the large number of people on the sidewalks and in the neighborhoods could be overwhelming. Besides, with the response we have seen in other cities can leave people on edge. What I saw in Tigard was amazing. Police presence, protesters in good spirits, and I felt unbelievably safe. Thank you for allowing us to express our feelings in a safe space. You are truly appreciated. Thank you, and then the community member's name. And we had 6 officers and a sergeant on that detail, specifically assigned to that event. This was written to us on June 21st. So I thought it was kind of important to recognize that people saw us out there and appreciated the officers doing what they were doing. First, creating a safe environment, and second, allowing people to exercise their First Amendment rights, which is absolutely what our goal is in those events, is to make sure it's a safe environment for everybody involved and allowing people to go out and exercise their constitutional rights. So I thought that was important to share with you all tonight as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Can you give us an update on photo enforcement and when you, like what's been going on and when you expect those cameras to be up?
Yes, I can. Photo enforcement, so our previous vendor, it has taken us quite a while to get through the process of I guess, breaking up with them. And they finally, yesterday, gave us notice that they have removed all of their equipment, and now everything is effectively abandoned. And so that is now going to allow our new vendor to go in and start work. So I was letting the city manager know this afternoon that it looks like probably we should be live with our new vendor by the second week in August. So they got a little bit delayed because they've been waiting for us, and so they put their contractor on another project, but now they're going to pull them off and put them onto this. So they're going to be about a week longer than what we were hoping for, but it's understandable. They've been waiting for us for a couple of months. So should be by the second week in August, we are up and running, and then having the first location calibrated and working correctly. I don't know which one that's going to be yet, which intersection, so just it could be any of them, all right? I honestly don't know. But by the end of August, everything should be calibrated, up and running, and running at full speed.
I think the follow-up question is, because the cameras have been down so long because of that vendor, is there any recourse for them dragging their feet?
Unfortunately, no.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to ask a question. Other questions? Yeah, Councilor Robbins?
Thank you. Regarding the red light cameras and turning them back on, whereas I'm sure everyone in the public should and is absolutely driving as if the cameras are still on, the word may have spread that the cameras were off. Could we get some social media or some sort of notification? Is it appropriate to say, hey, all of you, we are turning these back on so people don't get shocked, or is that inappropriate? I don't know.
No, I don't think
I mean,
it's-
I mean, I have an inside deal here, right? Because I'm here every week, so I know, so I can be careful, but maybe some people.
Well, hopefully most of our community members are watching tonight, so they'll know, and they've got the
Yes.
inside scoop.
Yes.
But yes, we absolutely can do something like that. We are not planning on doing a warning period like we did when we first started the program, because you're right. I actually had somebody say to me the other day that they were sure that they were going to get a ticket because they ran a light at 99 and Hall, and I didn't bother to let them know that the cameras aren't actually there right now. I just said, yeah, gosh, I don't know what to tell you. And I just let it go because, there is a bit of awareness that goes along with it. But yeah, we can absolutely do that to say that, we'd like to introduce our new vendor for photo enforcement or something like that. But yes, we can certainly do something like that.
To be fair, I know they're still off, and I still cringe when I see, you know what I mean? There's still that hesitation. So, Councilor who?
Thank you, Mayor. I think you might answer that already, because I saw the response time for priority 1, 2, 3 calls went up slightly. That's probably because we have more calls. But for priority 4, it actually dropped below priority 1, 2, and 3. So that's kind of interesting.
I can give you a little insight into
Okay.
why that likely is.
All right.
We have light duty officers that work at the desk, and priority 4 or 5 calls are the cold thefts, the types of calls that can be taken over the phone. So they see those calls pop in and they take them almost immediately because they don't like letting calls sit there. So that's why the response time, because the response time is based on the dispatch time and then the time that the officer hits arrive. So they'll hit arrive, and it can be very quickly. They'll get the dispatch, they'll see it come in there, and then they'll hit, they'll take the call and then hit arrived and then make the phone call. So that's very likely. Without doing the actual research on the individual calls, I can't know for certain, but I feel very confident that that's why that is. Because we do have 3 officers on light duty right now, and they're all very attentive to calls that come in, trying to make sure that it leaves the officers that are out on the road free to take those priority 1 and 2 calls. So they really try and take those calls that they can take, that they can do phone reports with.
Any additional questions? Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mayor.
The next item is the Tigard Area Chamber of Commerce update, and we have past Chair Tom Engel and current Chair Sarah Tanner. Welcome. And Whitney. Whitney, you can come up too.
They didn't want to come up because I remember how nervous I was the first time too. But just wanted to introduce you to, this is our new board chair. This is Sarah Tanner, Forenza Wealth Management. Dr. Whitney Green Bautista owner of Pinnacle Wellness. She is our board chair-elect, so that means basically she's going to watch and learn, and then in a couple of years she'll be taking over the position. So we're going to probably rock, paper, scissors who comes once a week, but wanted to make sure you all saw folks here. It's not just Megan and me. There are actually a lot of people in the chamber. So with that, you guys get to stay here. I'm just going to go through this really quick. I'm going to be on the board through 2027 at this point. So if you have any questions for any of us along the way, by all means, feel free to reach out. 70th birthday, a lot of you were there. Thanks for coming. That was really, really fun. And I was one of those people who had never been to Summer Lake Park. And it's really, really fun. But it was just great to see you all there and how well we were just able to come together and celebrate that accomplishment. We did accompany Congresswoman Salinas on a tour to Fought Steel last week. It's very nice. We are getting a lot more requests for business tours like that. I got to take the CEO up on going to take that one too, because they really do some really good work. Ava Roasteria, the ribbon cutting and grand opening, set for July 28th. More details on the chamber website. I have literally been to every one of those locations, even the ones that close. They're great for business meetings, and they're just wonderful places to hang out. So if you can make it, I encourage you to go. Their pastries are just heaven. They're good. Leadership Tigard, class of 2026. We're taking applications now. We're looking for 20 to 30 seats. If you know of anybody in the community, and this could be anybody with any sort of experience, it could be business people, it could be government, it could be retirees. It really gives us a nice, rich perspective when we have all those different types of folks there. It's definitely a good leadership training experience, but for me and a lot of others, it is an incredible deep dive into what's going on in Tigard. And no matter how long you've been here, you can't help but learn something. It's just a great program. I strongly encourage you to consider joining, or if you know of somebody, recommending it to them. We are currently working with House Majority Leader Ben Bauman and Senator Courtney Neron Mislin to set up ongoing listening sessions for Tigard businesses. We're definitely looking forward to that. Anytime we have a chance to hear from them and share our perspective, it's a win. We do definitely learn from each other. In terms of the farmers market, blueberries are in season, I can tell you. I encourage you to stop on by. Fresh produce, the hot food vendors. I want to redirect your attention to the idea of the deep fried egg rolls, both sweet and savory, that I had mentioned a few months ago. They're still good, and I think they're still there. All right, networking and visibility, GMT, Good Morning Tigard, every Thursday. Again, it's a really great way, even for us as members, to just go and be in a workplace where someone is conducting business. It's also just a great way to mingle and meet some different business owners and community people. If you do have any information or want more information on educational events, ribbon cuttings, do check the chamber website. Save the dates are at the bottom of your report here. Encourage you, again, Ava's business listening session, after hours at Three Mermaids, Northwest Accent. If you haven't been there, that place is really cool. She does amazing, really good work on some wonderful stuff, silk screening. And finally, just getting to the last part of this, September 24th, save the date, 9:30 to 2:30, State of Business and Small Business Expo, Shaping Tigard's Future, Innovation, Investment, and Inclusive Growth. We would love to see any or all of you there. It's a really good learning experience. This is something I think we're on our third or fourth year, roughly. It's our effort to have experts come together, professionals come together, have some conversations, learn some things, and it's just a nice focused event to talk about the business environment in Tigard and also county and statewide as well. I encourage you to come. I believe Sarah is going to be presenting this year too.
Yes.
So.
Can I add a little?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I wasn't going to say anything. But last year I attended the State of Business, and it was a really well-run expose. There were all kinds of people talking about all kinds of things. But what really struck me the most is that the room was filled with business owners and not any decision makers. And that, I thought, here's your forum. You know, here are the people that are telling you what they need, what they'd like to see, what they'd like to help with. And they were just telling that to each other. And so, you know, as a chamber member and now as the incoming chair, I would really love for us to engage more from a business perspective. And what can we do to engage you, and love to introduce you to the folks that we are representing as a chamber. So we would love to have you come if you have time, not for the whole day. It's a long day, but it provides a lot of great information. So my 2 cents.
There's no shortage of demands on your time, and I'm sure you get invited to every coffee clutch, bar mitzvah, and Lord knows what else. If you can make it, we would love to have you there. Your voice, your perspective makes a big difference. So we would love to see you. Whitney, is there anything on your mind that you want to talk about?
I'm hosting chamber on Thursday if anyone wants to come to Pinnacle Wellness Center at 7:30.
Okay.
Yeah. Good morning, Tiger.
Any questions we can help with?
Welcome, Sarah. Welcome, Whitney. We look forward to having you here.
Thank you.
And, you know, whoever is lucky enough to get to come this month, which month?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is council, board, and committee liaison reports. I don't remember which way we started last time. Councilor Gadusi, you're up.
So for last month with the library board, they did the trial with the book lockers, and that trial is overall complete, so they're likely going to be removing those, and that's the one that's out in their main lobby before you walk into the library. They are talking about increasing access to library resources and services regardless of gender and identity, so they're coming up with projects in order to become a more continue to become a more inclusive library. And with PRAB, we had a wonderful outing earlier this week where the Tualatin River Keepers got to show us a lot of what's going on in Cook Park and with the Tualatin River. One thing that I was particularly excited about was the recent donation by our Rotary Club that will be providing with a life jacket loaner program over at Cook Park. So that'll be fun to see when it opens.
All right, since my last liaison report on June 17th, I only had one meeting to attend as the primary council liaison. That was a meeting of the Planning Commission, which occurred on July 7th. At that meeting, the Planning Commission received an update on the transportation plan for River Terrace 2.0, which the council will be receiving later tonight. The consensus of the Planning Commission was to support Scenario 1. The Planning Commission also received a legislative update in order to discuss new state laws that have impacts on the Planning Commission. One of the most impactful bills was SB 974, which effectively eliminated quasi-judicial reviews for residential developments. That means the Tigard Planning Commission's purview will be limited to quasi-judicial reviews for commercial developments and municipal code changes. Looking at Skylar to make sure that's cool, getting a head nod. Want to make sure I'm giving accurate information. And I think it's worth noting that the City of Tigard did submit testimony on May 8th, 2025 to the House Committee on Housing and Homelessness that in order to encourage a no vote on that particular bill. Otherwise, the next meeting of the Urban Renewal Funding Selection Subcommittee will be held in August, and the next meeting of the Willamette River Water Coalition will be held in October. Also, I everyone on the council really enjoyed the PRAB meeting at Cook Park yesterday. I'd never paddled the Tualatin River there before, so it was a really exciting opportunity. And finally, I'd like to share that I joined Mayor Lube for interviews for board and committee appointments on June 26th, and that's going to be the set that's coming up at our next meeting to consider for review, and I found the entire experience to be highly informative, and I appreciate the opportunity to take part in those interviews. Thank you.
Okay, so Regional Waters Consortium does not meet this month. Audit Committee meets on Thursday. So the only thing that I'll share is WEA, Westside Economic Alliance, had a meeting, and really what I want to focus on is what they're really targeting, and it really is that message and advocacy around jobs and the push for economic development. and really the advocacy, not, just that we need more jobs given, the impact recently of layoffs, but also the advocacy at the state level to say, what is the state doing to fund and support and generate more jobs? And so just a huge push on that. And then and timing-wise, to see in the Oregonian, the creation of the bipartisan caucus to focus on that, I think is good timing. And I think we'll continue to see associations like WEA really push for what the role that Oregon plays in really bringing in important jobs. And I think that's something that clearly we as a council really care about and look forward to those continued conversations and advocacy. And that's it for me. So thanks, Mayor.
Youth Councilor Hellick hasn't gone to a meeting yet, so Councilor Shaw, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the Washington County Community Development Policy Advisory Board. Thankfully, there is no acronym for that, but I think it would be confusing if there was. But we discussed the continued funding and availability for the Community Development Block Grant, otherwise known as CDBG, and the Home Investment Partnerships, otherwise known as HOME programs. And these programs have really delivered via federal support, monies towards local housing, infrastructure, facilities initiatives, and our critical public services. It's about 50 years plus in programs, as well as they've been in place, and really has been beneficial to our communities, both CDBG and also HOME. Within HOME, 100, it's really interesting because great statistics. We've been able to construct and rehabilitate more than 1.3 million affordable housing units and also provide direct rental assistance to over 400 families since its inception in 1992. So very beneficial. Unfortunately, the current iteration of the U.S. House budget did not include CDBG, and HOME is proposed to be eliminated. So a number of cities have written letters via the Washington County Community Development Policy Advisory, as well as Washington County Commissioners. They have also written a letter in hopes that these programs will continue to be funded at the federal level, since they bring so much positive infrastructure and facility initiatives and jobs, quite frankly, to our city. And then we did not meet within transportation because next month, in August, we're going to be having a field trip, and we're going to be going to the Tiger Triangle with the Downtown Advisory Committee. So I look forward to providing an update, and also attended last night's Prab kayaking field trip, and that was a wonderful opportunity to yet again get back onto the river, but also to see our habitat, including a bald eagle. So that was wonderful. So thank you.
I attended the Town Center Advisory Commission meeting, and the commissioner finalized their key performance indicators for their strategic plans or goal, and they have 3 goals: one around housing, one on economic development, and another one on transportation. And they are having the joint tour with the Transportation Advisory Committee next month, and information should come out soon. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm last. Since our last workshop meeting, I attended the Water Advisory Board. All of my meetings are like right after our workshop meeting. So the next day we had the Water Advisory Board meeting. And we are trying to organize and discussing plans for our annual meeting with council. We decided to push it a little bit later so we could be more prepared, I think, to October or November, when we could pick a date. And Mr. Rager is going to help us get all that planned. There was some discussion about what we want to talk about, and also some questions about how much access the Water Advisory Board should have to emergency preparations that we have. There's some question about, is that secret, or should the advisory board have access to it? So we're still working that out. I also, no one mentioned, but I know we all went to the Festival of Balloons. I did go super early on Sunday to get a ride, but unfortunately the weather was not good. But it was still so cool to see them all, and I think it's such a wonderful event that we do. I also volunteered for the band there because we told people when they could cross the street. And Councilor Shaw and I were also, we met up at the, not as a meeting, but as an open house for Rep. Andrea Salinas. And where were we? Tualatin High. And that was very interesting. So
Thank you. Region 1 Act didn't have a meeting. We have a workshop next week, which is also going to include a tour of the Abernathy Bridge. I'm told it's quite high, so that should be an interesting experience. For the WCCC, the meeting yesterday, we talked about resilient transportation funding options for county-wide transportation, acknowledging that MISTIP is potentially in the same boat as a lot of other funding sources, and is there a more stable way to continue funding transportation in our county? The Metro came and gave us 3 different presentations on regional housing coordination strategy, looking for action in the next 6 years to accomplish something. That is the focus of that study. There's also a Metro Futures vision, although I wasn't quite sure exactly what the vision was for, other than like a vision of Metro and possibly the region. It felt very, 30,000, 100,000 feet high. And then the last thing they presented on was Regional Rail Futures Study, which is an overall picture of rail in the region and potential future lines, which includes the Southwest Corridor. The chair and mayor's meeting yesterday, we also talked with Clean Water Services. I requested that Clean Water Services come to City Council and do a presentation kind of in general, and so we can have a discussion with them. They said that they will, so they're going to coordinate with us to hopefully come soon. We talked about the new West Basin Master Plan. It doesn't impact Tigard. Tigard is in the East Basin, and that master plan is from 2021. And then Washington County is coming soon to discuss 2 levies, the public safety and library levy, and they will be coming in September. For JPACT, last month, the discussion topics were the IBR MTIP amendment, and then the RUFA steps to draft. You've heard a lot about RUFA funding for me, because that includes the North Dakota Bridge. It is very exciting because we have been included in their recommendations for funding, which is a big deal. We focused really hard on ensuring that our public comments were taken into consideration, which is why they went with option 3. That meeting is on Thursday morning. I have encouraged community members to please provide public comment in support of the plan, which would provide Tigard with $8 million for the North Dakota Bridge. The Metropolitan Mayors Consortium, we were really active at the end of session, which included myself going in person on the last day until very late to work through and advocate for the city's positions. We have done some reporting for transportation and our infrastructure sort of projects due to the transportation package not passing and just dwindling resources from the gas tax. And we're also prepping for a special session, which we anticipate to come here anytime soon to focus on transportation. Also, last month, I was in Tampa for the U.S. Conference of Mayors annual conference. I attended many breakout sessions, which included housing and abundance theory, elements of a healthy community, a whole government approach to public safety, which it's always nice when I go to those and I get to, come back and tell the chief, hey, we're doing all the things that they say are best practices. The P3 task force, which is an important discussion topic with us purchasing the potential parkland and looking for a partnership. Childcare discussions. A really interesting session was Sanctuary Cities and ICE and the mayors who were really dealing with it on the front lines, and many climate issues and trying to find climate funding in this new administration. So that is what I did in the last month. Does anyone have any questions for anybody? Okay. We will move on to the River Terrace 2.0 transportation update, and we have Senior Planner Gata. Yes. Okay. And Assistant Community Development Director Warren. Welcome. Welcome back.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brittany Gata. I'm the Senior Planner in Tigard's Community Development Department, and I'll be providing staff's update on the River Terrace 2.0 Transportation Network. Assistant Director Skylar Warren will also be joining me after the presentation and will help answer questions. Next slide, please. Tonight's presentation is going to focus on a couple different types of transportation work we've been doing lately. The first is I wanted to set the stage by providing an overview of the different transportation deliverables that are a part of the project as a whole, so you can understand where we were and where we're going. Next, I'll be providing an engagement update, mainly on transportation-focused outreach, but also providing a general update on some outreach we're doing this summer and an exciting announcement that we have to share. We'll also be just touching on the draft transportation network. This is a first glimpse of the active transportation network and the street network. We just passed out those 2 handouts for you. They are the same that are in the presentation materials as of today. But the maps actually were updated since the presentation was originally sent out last week. So I'll be highlighting a couple changes in those maps. And lastly, the primary focus of our presentation this evening is to discuss the results of the draft tile flat extension scenarios evaluation. And we are requesting that council provide feedback on a preferred network scenario. And this is critical because once we get direction from council on a street network, it will allow us to finalize that street network, which needs to be done before we can move on to finalizing other infrastructure plans, like our water systems plan, sanitary sewer plan, et cetera. So it all feeds back to the street network. It also allows us to move forward with the transportation system plan amendment, which has some critical deadlines this summer and fall, and get started on the equitable finance strategy as well. Next slide, please. So let's start with the transportation deliverables overview, just to let you know what we've been up to so far and what's next for River Terrace 2.0. Next slide, please. So the first body of work is working on developing the preliminary street network. So again, we're sharing a quick glimpse of this evening with you, but even before we got to the first draft that we have tonight, there have been many iterations of the draft street network, different iterations of even small components of that street network to get to where we are today. It's also taken months worth of analysis with our transportation consultant team to figure out the best draft to put forth publicly. The second deliverable that we are mainly going to be talking about tonight is the tile flat extension scenarios analysis. And before we can determine what that internal street network is, we had to assess the different scenarios for streets that could make up that network. And that's why we're asking for direction from you this evening. And once that network is identified, like I mentioned, it will allow us to move forward with the final network in place so that we can work towards the equitable finance strategy and the transportation system plan amendment, which are next down the line. And I failed to mention street designs. This is coming up soon in our project. Once we figure out the primary transportation network, it also allows us to classify those streets and figure out what those facilities should look like for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists as well. Next slide, please. Okay, next I'll provide an update on the community engagement, mainly related to transportation work, but also some things coming up for this summer. Next slide, please. So the River Terrace 2.0 transportation work has been informed by a wide range of community outreach. It originally started back with the concept plan project in 2021 through 2023, but we've been hard at work with the community plan process as well. The first event that I'd want to highlight is our public open house, which was hosted in April of this year, both online and in person. And we received about 100 comments during that process, and when participants were asked about transportation issues, we asked them how can we encourage people to walk and bike more, what the community's priorities are when they're considering a potential extension of the tile flat road scenarios, and about street design preferences. We've also had multiple community advisory committee meetings and one technical advisory committee that has discussed transportation issues. The community advisory committee is with a group of about 10 to 12 community members from different backgrounds. And we have 8 total meetings with them throughout the process. So very early on, the second meeting in October of 2024, we discussed different climate resilience strategies and how we can try and help lower dependence on cars in River Terrace 2.0, specifically how to encourage a more walkable and bikeable community. The 5th Community Advisory Committee meeting this past March dug into more of the details and focused on the street and active transportation network, and it also talked about the design and how streets can be designed to make sure that all modes of transportation move safely throughout the neighborhood. And then the Technical Advisory Committee is made up of primarily jurisdictional partners, but also other stakeholders, such as Washington County, King City, Clean Water Services, and others. The third meeting with this group in April talked a lot about transportation. We covered the street network, including different constraints, design considerations, and different scenarios for a potential tile flat road extension. We also talked about funding options and interim design solutions and relation to project goals specifically around the question of tile flat. We also had 2 focus group meetings in April. The first was with Spanish speakers, which was a group of about a dozen different community members. And they were asked about really broad questions, and we looked to get their feedback on a broad range of transportation preferences and what would help them feel safe in the neighborhood. And similarly with students, we focused on their needs and preferences and how to make sure everyone is comfortable biking and walking. And then just a general engagement update quickly for what we have going on this summer. We're excited to share with you that we are ramping up engagement this summer to make sure that we're reaching the most people we can throughout this process. Our consultant team has been working hard to make sure that they have completely covered our bases and made sure that we're connecting with Tigard residents that make up the demographic of this diverse community. So engagement opportunities are going to take place mostly this summer, but also into early fall. There will be multiple online surveys that will be shared through social media and newsletters. There will be 4 tabling events at local Tigard events like the Community Preparedness Fair and El Tigre in October, and a couple other events. We also have our second open house, which has been on the books for a while, but it was officially scheduled for mid-September. And we also have upcoming advisory committee meetings, one with the Community Advisory Committee and another with the Technical Advisory Committee, where we're going to be sharing a lot of information with them, but specifically natural resources, transportation being the top 2. We will be discussing the tile flat extension scenarios during those 2 advisory committee meetings, so we'll be receiving more feedback from them now that we have this first full draft of the analysis to share. One other type of engagement we're doing this summer is what I'm deciding to call an open house roadshow. We are taking the open house topics on the road to go and discuss directly with different groups who we haven't heard from much yet during this process. So we identified 6 different groups where we're going to connect with different community leaders and other members of the community who can connect us with seniors, individuals with mobility challenges or who identify as having disabilities, regulated affordable housing residents, and 3 different minority groups, the first being Spanish speakers, who we've really only done 1 targeted engagement event with that group, and they are the 2nd largest language spoken in Tigard. The second would be with Tigard's Vietnamese community, which is the 3rd most prominent language spoken. And then lastly, members of the Asian Pacific Islander community as well. So we'll be using a go-to-them strategy to make engaging in the River Terrace 2.0 project as easy and convenient as possible. We'll also be sharing the online version of the open house with them at that time if they would like to share. But also we're just trying to get them informed and hear from them directly. So all this outreach means that we are hard at work. We have a lot going on with River Terrace 2.0. We're taking a lot of big picture ideas from things like transportation, natural resources, and parks, that we originally developed with the concept plan and are refining now, and turning them into draft approaches that we can share with the community and request feedback from the public and from council. So alongside this community outreach, we'll also be checking in with council regularly to provide project updates and to request feedback as we keep moving forward. And my last update is an exciting one. So I'm very pleased to announce that I have a new team member who will be helping me out with the River Terrace 2.0 project. Our very own Trin Miller was recently hired as Tigard's new housing planner. And Trin's extensive experience in housing policy is going to be a great asset to the River Terrace 2.0 project. She's also going to bring her extensive familiarity with the community's feedback of the home project so that the River Terrace 2.0 team can better understand the community's expectations and their needs around getting walkable services and commerce into their neighborhoods and into the future neighborhood of River Terrace 2.0. Next slide, please. So specifically around transportation, I wanted to share what we've heard so far from the community. The first would be that community members want to prioritize comfort and safety for walkers and bikers first and foremost. They want to use things like separated bike lanes, frequent pedestrian crossings, and other safety improvements like lighting or landscaping to help keep people safe and to keep drivers moving slowly. The second top priority would be to lessen impacts to natural areas. This also includes preserving as many trees as possible. And about the potential extension of Tile Flat Road through River Terrace 2.0, we heard these top two priorities quite frequently. The first would be from the Community Advisory Committee, who a majority of whom are unsupportive of a Tile Flat Road extension because of the added impacts to natural areas that have been identified in the, and that also includes impacts to a potential, including potential impacts to a wetland and a beaver dam that are in the area of a potential Tile Flat Road extension. And open house community members also noted these two things. When they were asked what should be considered when evaluating a Tile Flat Road extension, they noted that their top priorities were comfort and safety, biking and walking, and to lessen the impacts to streams and natural areas. So that reinforces the top two priorities that we've been hearing more broadly. The third is that the community would like to see a connected pedestrian and bike network, including trails and also public transit, all to reduce the dependence on vehicles within the neighborhood, and then also to connect residents with regional destinations as well. And I wanted to call out that we got several comments that some existing facilities in the area surrounding River Terrace 2.0 feel like a barrier to people walking and biking. Roy Rogers Road was called out as a specific example where people noted that they would rather get in their cars and drive a short distance if they had to cross Roy Rogers Road just because it felt so uncomfortable. And lastly, we've been hearing consistently from the community, actually citywide, that residents want more options for services and shops in their neighborhoods within walking and biking distance. We've heard this with Home, we've heard this with River Terrace 2.0. And we know that people are excited about there being more walkable and bikeable options in their neighborhoods, but we also know that people are still expecting to need cars. Even though they're going to be able to walk and bike to meet many of their daily needs because of the 3 planned commercial areas in River Terrace 2.0, that doesn't take away the need to commute for most people to work, or take away the need to travel to regional destinations or further afield. So we know that people will need cars, so we're going to have to consider how we can make on-street and off-street parking available, but also provide it in a way that doesn't take away from the safety and the comfort of pedestrians and bikers using the network. Next slide, please. Okay, this next section is where we get to share a glimpse of the street network and active transportation network with you. These are the maps that I distributed before the presentation. I just wanted to call out that these maps have been changed since the presentation was first distributed last week. The primary changes were just to make them easier to read. The first versions included different symbologies for every single different type of bike and pedestrian facility, and it made it really busy. So I wanted to make sure that it was simplified to call out just the areas where pedestrians and bikers will have dedicated facilities. And I'll also note one other change on the next slide, please. Okay, so this first map is the draft street network, showing how drivers would both get around within the neighborhood and also how they would connect to the surrounding network. This map here is just showing the recommended tile flat extension options, which is going to be the next section of this presentation. So we do have maps with the full variety of potential scenarios that are on deck should they be needed in the future, but we again just wanted to simplify what's being shared. The River Terrace 2.0 boundary is shown as a thick gray line here to differentiate it from the surrounding unincorporated areas, and River Terrace 1.0 to the east, Kingston Terrace to the south, and Beaverton to the north. Primary streets that are envisioned for River Terrace 2.0 are shown in purple. The primary streets are collector level streets, which means they are typically 2 lanes. They have wide sidewalks. They might have wide multi-use paths for bikers and pedestrians. They also have a lot of landscaping. You can kind of think of River Terrace Boulevard as just an example. Speeds are also kept slow on collectors. So even though they carry a larger volume of cars, they're moving slowly. Secondary streets are shown in blue. These are neighborhood level streets, which are also 2 lanes, also slower speeds, and they also have dedicated pedestrian and bike facilities. And one change I wanted to call out was that at the south end of River Terrace 2.0 West, we did make a change which was actually just a correction that was planned and that aligns with the recommendation in the tile flat scenarios summary. The change is that it takes a neighborhood route and extends it south from the extension of Bull Mountain Road. So the kind of second roundabout on the eastern side of Bull Mountain, the blue line showing the secondary street extending to the River Terrace 2.0 West boundary at the south. So that provides enhanced connectivity between the residents in that southern part of River Terrace 2.0 West. There's also a future park planned there, and the commercial area, which is planned to be centered around Bull Mountain as well. And one other important thing to note is that local residential streets are not shown on this plan and will certainly provide greater connectivity as development occurs in the future. But because those types of facilities are determined based on the needs of individual developments, it's not possible to represent them at this stage of the process. Next slide, please. Yes, please.
I'd like to ask a question so I
Sure.
don't get lost later.
Yeah.
So the dark blue, the primary streets are what you call collector streets, right?
Correct.
And so what is the current Bull Mountain Road
That is
in that area?
So where it exists today, it's an arterial class street, I believe.
What does arterial class mean?
So we'll confirm if it is in fact an arterial, but do you know for sure?
Good evening, Skylar Warren, Assistant Director of Community Development. Bull Mountain on the east side of Roy Rogers, I believe is collector. I will have to get back and confirm that. Shoals is definitely a arterial, and Beef Bend is an arterial. Roy Rogers is an arterial, but I believe that Bull Mountain is a collector, and I'm just going off memory there. So that might be incorrect.
When you say 2 lanes, that means 1 going each way, not 2 going each way, 1 going each way. And so then on Bull Mountain going up the mountain from 99, is that considered a collector?
I believe so, but again, we'd have to get back to you on it because sometimes these road classifications change even along the same alignment. and sometimes they'll cross a junction, and it might change classification. So one easy way to tell if something was originally planned as an arterial within the county is that it typically will not allow driveway access. So you will see usually those development that's adjacent to it taking access from a secondary street that's off of an arterial.
So that means you can't have a house on the big road itself?
You can
with a
have,
driveway.
with an arterial, you can have a house on the big road, but you're not taking your driveway access from the arterial. So in other words, your house might still front the arterial road, but you would have access from a secondary road that's behind either an alley or a local or neighborhood street.
Okay.
Typically, in the past, that's been the case as well for collectors within Tigard, so that's one of the reasons that you don't see driveways accessing River Terrace Boulevard, because the frequency of those driveways do interfere with the operation of the road as a collector.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Schlack has something to say, and I will just say a 2024 November plan from Washington County has Bull Mountain listed as a collector. Councilor Slack, and then Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to pick up on the comment about how local residential roads will be decided in more detail at a later date, and just being mindful of what I mentioned earlier, the SB 974 changes. I'm trying to really make sure I understand where the council's role is in some of these decisions. So I'm just curious, when those smaller residential roads are decided, what's the process look like? Is that just totally on the planning side, or will that be included in the transportation plan that we ultimately have to approve before River Terrace 2.0 proceeds?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the local streets will not be included in the Transportation System Plan Amendment. They are only decided during the land use process and subsequent engineering permits to refine the details. But the roadways at the time of development application are determined just to serve that internal network. So whatever they are proposing at that time, whatever streets are needed to support those uses, those houses, that's when those are determined.
I'll offer that the way that we typically regulate local street provision, because we do not determine alignments at this stage of planning, is through block length standards. So by setting those block length standards, we are basically setting the cadence at which a local street would appear, which in essence determines where a developer would need to place them in order to meet the standards. So I would say River Terrace 1 is a good example of that. None of those local streets were planned as part of the transportation system plan. They're planned at the development stage, but the block length standards are what is creating that rhythm of the local streets.
So based on that, because I haven't heard that phrase before, of block length standards. So we'll have a framework idea of where things could go, but based on those, but it won't be, we won't know what exactly everything looks like until actual developers come in.
Yes, that's correct.
Cool, thank you.
Councilor Shaw.
Sorry, just to clarify, so Shoals Ferry is an arterial, as is currently Southwest Beef Bend Road, because Beef Bend has lots of driveways that go right onto the highway, the roadway. So according to your definition, that wouldn't be a case, but here it is. So has it already been predetermined it's an arterial because there are driveways that go right to that road?
So Beef Bend is one of those odd roads. It's, sort of, it's been there forever, and I'm sure at some point it was some sort of path for native persons or animals who are moving through the area. And, it just has developed in kind of the position that it's in, with a lot of farm uses next to it, and those farm uses are taking access from it. Arterial probably didn't even exist as a designation for roadways when that road was first used and paved. So in new roads, new arterials, that's where you would not see driveways taking direct access. It's also the case that Beef Bend in that section was built to a rural profile, which is a little bit different than the profile of an urban arterial, which has different standards. So that's why you see no shoulders on the road, you see no sidewalk on the road, you see just 2 lanes with a center stripe and the fog lines. So it's not eligible to actually be brought up to urban standards with sidewalks, curbs, gutters, all that until it is within the urban growth boundary, which it is now. So it's the next phase of development, the redevelopment of the area, where you would see the prohibition on that direct access. So in King City, where you're seeing development happening, a little bit shows up on that map there. None of the properties that are along that roadway are taking direct access from the newly urbanized arterial.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. And then just a follow-up question. Does that mean then a predominant amount of traffic will then be on Beef Bend to get over to River Terrace 2.0 as opposed to Bull Mountain?
I don't believe we have the exact numbers for that split. However, it's safe to assume that the existing arterial network of Shoals Ferry Road, Roy Rogers, and then also Bull Mountain and Beef Bend in addition would bring the vast majority of people to the River Terrace 2.0 neighborhood. Is there anything else to add?
Yeah, and I would also say that that's by design. In some ways, that's the purpose of an arterial network, is to provide that broader regional connectivity, because these roadways work in tiers, right? The arterials are taking you, across the region. They're getting you to the interstates and the highways. The tier below that, the collector, is getting you to the arterial. The neighborhood streets are getting you to the collector, and the local is getting you to the neighborhood street.
The youth counselor has a question.
So I just wanted to clarify, because I guess I don't really know the difference between a collector and an arterial road and what they look like, so I just want to clarify what they are. That's okay.
Yeah, it's a great question, and probably should have covered that a little bit more thoroughly. So an arterial class street is the highest volume of street that a city would typically have. So have you been to Roy Rogers Road or Shoals Ferry Road? Shoals Ferry. That's an arterial. So think about, you typically would have 2 lanes of traffic in each direction and a center turn lane. You'll have wide sidewalks. Sometimes if speeds are slow enough, you would have some bike facilities as well. And then a collector street is a step down from that. So it's carrying somewhat fewer cars. Speeds are significantly slower since you're going through neighborhoods sometimes. But you still have pedestrian and bicycle facilities typically on new roads. Sometimes you have a center turn lane where it's needed, but otherwise it's just one direction of travel in each direction. For the most part, there are exceptions to this, and standards differ between different jurisdictions as well.
Would a collector be like a McDonald or like a Walnut, just to sort of give perspective?
You're testing our memory on our street classifications here. I believe that McDonald is indeed a collector. Hall is an arterial because it is a state road, and it is moving people through the region. So I think that's a great example of, there's the classification, which is about the function of the facility, where it's taking people and how it's connecting people to destinations. And then there's the profile of the road. Usually those things line up, but they don't always, right? So Shoals Ferry is a great example. There are sections of Shoals Ferry as an arterial that are 7 lanes, right? Hall Boulevard is also an arterial, but it's 2 lanes in large portions. So it's really about, its volume, it's where you're going, sometimes it's speed, but there can be a little bit of a disconnect between the profile, the cross-section, and the function of the road.
Did you get your question answered?
And are arterial and collector streets, like which one is primary and which one would be secondary?
Yeah, so there are no new arterial streets planned for River Terrace 2.0. So we don't need those highest volume streets that are really intended for regional travel. Those are not needed to support River Terrace 2.0. So the primary streets would be collectors, so that second tier. And then the lighter blue lines is our third tier, which is a neighborhood street. It's quite similar to a collector, but it's really intended to provide more connections within the neighborhood. So you're kind of getting off of the primary street network, going through River Terrace 2.0 and dipping into the residential neighborhoods.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Robbins?
Thank you for coming back to me. Just to comment on what you just asked, because I am concerned about this too, and it's a little hard to tell on these maps because all of the existing roads are all little tiny lines, so it's hard to tell the difference. But so when I first look at this suggested map, it looks like all the traffic is just going to dump out of River Terrace 2.0 west right onto Bull Mountain and up and over Bull Mountain. But there is this arterial Shoals Ferry that I am hopeful will divert traffic. So I'm going to say this, and I want you to say if this is correct or not, or if you think it's a good prediction or not. That, like, I just did a map of, I picked a place in River Terrace 1.0, and then I got directions to where I work, which is across town, so you have to get to 5 and stuff. And, you know, I'm picturing all these other people going over Bull Mountain, but with Shoals Ferry right there, it's actually faster. It would, if I moved, it would get to work faster because I could just go on Shoals Ferry. So hopefully for some of the people who need to get to 95, or 5, sorry, wrong highway, 5, it might divert traffic out of the neighborhoods. Does that sound correct?
I think that's a fair assumption. We did have part of the analysis for Tile Flat, which we'll be talking about next in the presentation. It did look at the the number of vehicles on the surrounding arterial network. And if it's any indication at all of the different scenarios, there were different impacts on which vehicles would be traveling within the River Terrace 2.0 street network and which would be, what the volume would be on the surrounding arterial network. And the highest volumes were on Shoals Ferry and on Roy Rogers.
Can you compare that to the volume on Bull Mountain? If you can't, you can just say no, it's okay.
So I'll be clear that I'm not speaking in modeling terms here. And models are only as good as the data that you feed into them. So humans will make decisions based on the context that's around them. If an arterial is backed up, it's possible that someone could use a collector as an alternative means. And we know that there are apps out there that will sometimes direct people into neighborhoods. Generally, our goal is to keep that regional traffic, the higher speed traffic, on the arterial network, right? That is the appropriate location for that. Making the connection at Bull Mountain, we would presume, would not create there will be additional trips on Bull Mountain. That's for sure. Development in this area will create additional trips. We don't think that this network is necessarily pushing people to make the decision to connect through Bull Mountain. If that is a concern, then I think the scenarios analysis that we'll get into in a bit, there are clearly, I think, some scenarios that have the potential to direct more traffic onto Bull Mountain, and there are scenarios that have less potential to direct traffic onto Bull Mountain, and we can get into that as we talk about those scenarios.
Councilor Gadusi?
Thank you. One of my major concerns is all of the arterials sort of going into the Bull Mountain, given the infrastructure that's currently there. In theory, it would be great to bolster, Bull Mountain and Beef Bend in order to get that capacity increased. But, I mean, given the timeline, and one thing in looking forward as how the city develops, the city lines, specifically at Bull Mountain and Beef Bend, end up being weird. Just if you look at the city map, it's just really odd. What capacity do we have for improvements of both Beef Bend and Bull Mountain?
So both of those roadways are under the Washington County's roadway authority. So they are the planning authority for those roadways. We, of course, work very closely with Washington County on the future of these facilities in every stage of planning, and that includes in River Terrace 1. So the improvements that you see to widen Roy Rogers, that was all coordinated through the River Terrace 1. I mean, it's a county planning process, but the funding mechanism for it, that was all happening alongside River Terrace 1 because that was what kind of created the need to update the facility, to bring it up to urban standards. The same thing will happen along Beef Bend. It will need to be brought up to urban standards. And the good thing is that typically the most cost-effective way to do that is at the time that you do adjacent development. And so King City on the south side of Beef Bend is already bringing that roadway up to urban profile on their side of the road. And we would expect the same thing to happen on the north side of the road. And generally, we give developers credits against their system development charges for bringing an arterial or a collector up to the standards because it's above and beyond what they would have to pay to add a local street. Those improvements to Beef Bend will only extend as far as development does. So in the city of Tigard, that would end on the north side, that would end at 150th. On the King City side, it would stretch all the way along the southern portion of the road as long as development is happening there. The portion that's to the north of Beef Bend and to the east of 150th, all the way out to, I believe it goes all the way out to 99W, is in Washington County's planning authority. That's actually jurisdictional Washington County. It's not City of Tigard. So any projects to improve that roadway on the north side there would be county projects. The same thing goes for Bull Mountain. Once it leaves the River Terrace 1 area, that becomes a county facility, and any roadway improvement projects that would happen there would be county projects that were funded by MSTIP, other roadway monies, and would be programmed as part of their transportation system plan.
And as a follow-up, do you know if the county has any appetite to do any such improvements?
I'm sure the appetite is there. As in all things transportation planning and constructing, it comes down to money and the prioritization of facilities. So I believe that all of the money in the county's current TSP is programmed. Like we can get back to you on what facilities are actually programmed for improvement. I'm just guessing. I don't recall seeing Bull Mountain improvements on there. But I'm sure that the county, if the funding were available, would be interested in improving that roadway.
And then last one, I'm so sorry. So in looking forward, would this sort of jurisdictional transfer make sense to sort of look at for both Beef Bend and Bull Mountain?
So jurisdictional transfers do happen with these UGB expansion areas. I would say more typically in Washington County, it happens at the lower classification level. So there will be some roadways that are currently county roadways. They're actually public right-of-way that would actually come under city ownership. They're probably largely unimproved. One example would be the eastern half of Vandermost Road, because that does straddle the urban growth boundary and the city's presumed boundary should it annex all of these areas. So that would presumably be annexed to the city. I'm trying to think, there's Elsner Road is a good example on the south side in King City that was annexed to King City. We've not had conversations with Washington County about annexing either Beef Bend or Roy Rogers or any portion of Shoals, and I'm not sure that they would be interested in that. But it's not been the typical process that we've seen happen with UGB expansion areas in Washington County.
Thank you. My main concern is like building up a portion of it and then a portion of it's Washington County, so that ends up being undeveloped and then sort of skipping throughout. Doesn't seem to make sense. Thank you.
Well, and there's this always gets a little confusing, and there's two pieces to this. There's the annexation piece, like which jurisdiction is it within, and then who is the roadway planning and maintenance authority. So a great example there is with River Terrace 1, that is what's sometimes called a cherry stem annexation. So portion of the annexation just is of the right-of-way. So that portion of the right-of-way is within the city of Tigard, but the roadway authority for planning and maintenance remains Washington County.
I think this is a really important conversation, and I appreciate all the questions because we have community members, right, who even live on Bull Mountain, the mountain, not the road, and have complained about the increase in traffic that's even cutting through Bull Mountain. My concern is that we are going to continue to develop this area and put it into roads and a transportation system that really quite isn't ready for it. And I think about the people that we hear from frustrated trying to turn left onto 99 from Bull Mountain, and how long they're waiting now and how long they're going to continue to wait. Just from my personal experience, as far as whether people are going to take Shoals Ferry or Bull Mountain or Beef Bend, it depends on where you're headed. Right? If you're coming into Tigard and you're getting dumped right at Bull Mountain, you're going to take Bull Mountain in. If you're heading southbound, sometimes it's quicker to perhaps take Beef Bend to be able to get to I-5. Shoals Ferry is always quicker to go north. But that being said, in the 2.5, almost 3 years that I've lived in that area, I think I've taken Beef Bend once. So my primary roads are Shoals Ferry and Bull Mountain to get me around. And just thinking about the way that, you know, people are going to drop, we'll get into the conversation about if tile flat complicates it, but I don't know that how many people are going to take that extra left or right, you know, depending upon where they're going, if they can just cut through. And Bull Mountain seems to be, you know, one of the least prepared roads for that kind of additional traffic. So I think our concerns are valid, and we're already hearing from our community members that they're concerned about what's happening on those roads. So, yeah, Councilor Shaw.
That's one last follow-up question, so you can get on with the presentation. Not only just Bull Mountain Road, but I am actually very concerned about the Beef Bend Road too, because it'll dump you right onto Pacific or 99, and then you're just going to go to the heart of traffic, which will hit Bull Mountain or head south. And either way, it's going to go down Durham. So we already have a problem with McDonald. We're probably going to end up with a huge problem with Durham. And it just seems to me we could mitigate some of that with discussion now, as opposed to just saying, well, we'll build it when it comes. And so that's my concern. We already know McDonald's bad. We know Durham's likely to get worse. And I know this isn't a problem that you all can solve, and we're doing the right thing with getting the housing out there, but I just want to make sure that we're modeling to make sure we know what that's going to look like, and so we're not sentencing us to gridlock on 99 and several other roads with folks trying to get to 5. So, thank you.
My concerns with Roy Rogers as being a facility that's being identified as a barrier to pedestrian bicycle activities. And I noticed that some of them intersections are marked as traffic lights, but 2 of them are marked as pedestrian facility. So I'm wondering why only 2 of them are pedestrian facility, whereas the other 4 are traffic light. Why can't we just have more pedestrian facility? If it's just for money, maybe we can designate them as pedestrian facility for now, and if when we have money in the future, we can do that. So I'm wondering why they are not pedestrian facility.
This is a great question. Thank you for asking it. It gets back to that question of who is the roadway planning and maintenance authority. In this case, it's Washington County. Their position is that in order to add any kind of traffic control device to a facility, that it must meet engineering warrants, what are called warrants, and these are thresholds that must be crossed in order to, merit adding a light or some other traffic control device. In general, what we've seen with development is that the intersections are not yet meeting the county's warrant standards to add traffic control. So beyond the fact that we can't just dictate that there would be a traffic control device or a hawk flashing beacon for pedestrians or a pedestrian crossing, there is the fact that we don't even know if we did designate one when it could be added. And I'd give the example of Perth, where we had a developer that was ready to put in the signal with development, but we heard from the county that it didn't yet meet warrants, and so they paid a fee in lieu, and presumably that light will be added at a later time. I'll also give the example of with River Terrace 1, we had the multi-use pathway that follows River Terrace Boulevard. And at Shoals Ferry, there is actually a trail on the Beaverton side where that trail could land, and we requested pedestrian crossing there for safe crossing. That one also didn't meet warrants. So in some sense, this is out of our control, right? We could put the concept for these crossings on the map, but we are trying to be realistic about what we think could happen with development in the relatively near term based on the county's warrants and then also their intersection spacing standards, which are much longer for an arterial than they are for your typical collector.
Yeah, it's frustrating to hear that because I believe the county is also committed to equitable access. So it doesn't seem like the policy doesn't match what they want us to do in terms of equitable access. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for those questions. I'd like to move on to the Active Transportation Network, which is on the slide. Thank you, Carol, for advancing the slides. So this is the map that is showing the different dedicated pedestrian and bicycle facilities through River Terrace 2.0, and we're also showing the existing facilities that are nearby in River Terrace 1, and also some planned facilities around Kingston Terrace. So again, this is only showing the recommended transportation network, and there's more that we'll be talking about later with different extension scenarios. But on this map, there are blue lines, which are again showing those primary routes that are going to be within the right-of-way area, which means they could be along roads, they could be multi-use paths that are next to the road, but they are dedicated public facilities for bicyclists and pedestrians. This map is also showing trails. So those are the green lines on the map, and it's showing how trails could be developed at the edges of natural areas to provide both public access to nature, but also alternative routes for people to get around and to recreate in the neighborhood. And on this map, you're also seeing how these routes can connect people to future destinations like the 3 commercial areas, future parks, and Mountainside High School. Next slide, please. All right, so now that you've been introduced to the very draft street network, we're going to dig into the tile flat extension scenarios evaluation, which is assessing the potential street extension scenarios through River Terrace 2.0. Next slide, please. An extension of Tile Flat Road was initially identified by Washington County Studies and Plans, and leading up to the River Terrace 2.0 concept plan back in 2020, an extension of Tile Flat Road extending through River Terrace 2.0 and connecting to Roy Rogers was identified in a Washington County study called the Urban Reserves Transportation Study, also known as URTS. And during the URTS process, the city was a part of that process and consulted with the county during the formation of that analysis. And the city provided comments to the county requesting a comprehensive study of multiple scenarios for tile flat extending, including a no-build scenario, which was not a part of the URTS analysis. However, the county did not complete additional analysis at that time. So during the concept plan process for River Terrace 2.0, the city committed to doing that comprehensive analysis during the community plan process and identified the tile flat area as a special study area to be further assessed. So after the concept plan was adopted, later on in 2024, Washington County completed their own transportation system plan amendment. And on that TSP, it showed an extension of tile flat again going through River Terrace 2.0. It identified it as a refinement area. However, this was appealed by multiple parties, including the city, and it was taken to the Land Use Board of Appeals. And the Land Use Board of Appeals did remand the county's decision to adopt their transportation system plan update because they cited that a refinement area was not the correct way to identify a future roadway extension, and also the need to study different alternatives and do more analysis, including a no-build analysis to demonstrate compliance with different state and regional rules, such as the transportation planning rule and climate-friendly and equitable communities requirements from the state. As a part of this community plan process, we're here doing that comprehensive analysis. And the question of a tile flat road extension was scoped as a holistic and comprehensive assessment of 4 different network alternatives. And we looked at different quantitative and qualitative metrics to assess each alternative's multimodal performance, its benefits, and its impacts. And we looked at this from a variety of different angles like safety, equity, climate outcomes, cost, connectivity, and a variety of others. So this evening we're presenting the findings, again, of this first complete draft of the analysis, and we are requesting that council provide direction on which scenario is preferred so that it can be incorporated into the final street network for the River Terrace 2.0 area. But again, highlighting that it's still in draft form, we do expect some refinements along the way as the analysis is perfected. And a part of this draft review process, staff has been working with Washington County and has shared this draft analysis with them. They had an opportunity to review and provide comments. Their comments focused on methodology for the different metrics that were used. And we're currently going through the process internal to the team to review their comments and incorporate edits where necessary to address those. The county has not yet provided feedback on a preferred scenario. But once this analysis is further refined, it will be shared again with the county and they'll have another opportunity to provide feedback. And refinements to the analysis based on what we expect so far, we do anticipate that they'll be minor. But if there are changes down the road that are substantive, we will be updating council at that time to present those updates and identify the changes to confirm council's preferred direction. Yes.
Thank you, Senior Planner Gator. My question, and I appreciate that because that was something I was curious about.
Yeah.
But can you just give me an example of a methodology question that they had, just so I have a sense of what that means?
Yeah. Which do you want to? There are about 5 different
Yeah.
comments.
So an example is there was a comment about, these models are run based on, and this is getting beyond what I fully understand about transportation modeling, but it's based on models that are built on a periodic basis with the regional transportation plan. And because all of the work with ERTS and all of the work with River Terrace 2.0 concept planning happened with the 2018 revision of the RTP, they kept that model, and Washington County's comment was they should use the more recent model. We did have them go back, and I think they're going to rerun it with that model. There's some complexity there because all of the land, you have to rebuild a lot. You have to rebuild the land use assumptions and everything within the model. But fundamentally, we don't think that there will be anything substantive that would change with that, because the network is still the network and the land use is still the land use. Like any changes that we would expect to see there, according to the consultants, would be minor. But that's one example, and there were a few more that were kind of along those lines about, another one was modeling queuing length at the intersection of Shoals and Roy Rogers, which that is not typically a function of transportation modeling because it's an operational characteristic. So typically queue length you address through the operational timing of the traffic control device, or by extending a turn lane or adding another turn lane. It's typically not to my understanding, it's not used as a method to evaluate a new facility. So those are just 2 examples. I think there were probably 3 others that were related to those kind of modeling questions.
Great, thank you so much. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so in the evaluation, there were 4 alternatives that were assessed. These are called scenarios 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each scenario is made up of 1 or more street segments, and the segments are A, B, and C. And I wanted to call out that segment A is in every single scenario. So on this slide, we're seeing scenarios 1 and 2. Scenario 1 only includes segment A, which is an extension of Mountainside Way from the existing intersection of Shoals Ferry and Roy Rogers, the existing intersection with Shoals Ferry, and it extends it down to where Bull Mountain meets Roy Rogers. Scenario 1 does not extend Tile Flat Road. This is the no-build scenario. Scenario 2 includes segment A again, and also segment B, which is extending Tile Flat Road from Shoals Ferry. It goes outside of the urban growth boundary on the west side of the River Terrace 2.0 area, and then connects with the future extension of Mountainside Way. So like I mentioned, segment B does include land that is outside of the urban growth boundary. It would cross another stream and potentially impact a wetland in that location. And for the area that's outside of the UGB, it's important to note that building a road in this area would require a separate process outside of the Tigard's community plan process with the state called a goal exception. It's a challenging process, and if the goal exception were to be approved to allow the construction of a road outside of the urban growth boundary, additional funds would have to be identified outside of city sources to fund that piece of segment B. This means that a complete extension of segment B would likely lag years behind development of River Terrace 2.0. Next slide, please. Scenario 3 on the left-hand side is made up of segment A and segment C. Segment C extends Mountainside Way south to meet further south along Roy Rogers, either near Perth or Woodhue. And similar to segment B, segment C also extends outside of the urban growth boundary and it affects a stream. So this would also require the goal exception process and additional funding sources. And lastly, scenario 4 is the compilation of all 3 scenarios, and it includes segments A, B, and C. Next slide, please. So there are 5 categories of different metrics that were used in this analysis. The metrics were chosen to assess the benefits, but also the impacts of all modes of transportation for all network users. So we tried to, again, make this a holistic and comprehensive analysis to try and understand different options for the network. The first category would be vehicular network metrics. This is really thinking about cars. It's looking at volume of traffic on both surrounding arterial and collector streets and streets internal to River Terrace 2.0. It's also looking at the capacity for vehicle traffic at surrounding intersections and travel time on the surrounding existing network for regional travelers. The next is the multimodal network. This is looking at mostly active modes of transportation and also transit. So we're thinking about connectivity for bikers and pedestrians, safety and comfort for those users as well, and viability for future transit service and how that's affected by the different scenarios. The third group is environmental and livability metrics. This is trying to understand impacts around natural resources or climate-related goals like lowering greenhouse gas emissions. And it's also looking at cut-through traffic. So, you know, when you build a street network, people come to it, right? People are going to use that network. So the different scenarios have different implications for what type of travelers are using the internal River Terrace 2.0 network. And that has different implications for safety and noise and greenhouse gas emissions exposure for residents. The fourth category is development feasibility. The first one is support to commercial areas. This one's pretty fascinating because each of the scenarios, again, routes drivers in different ways across the existing network and the proposed network. And that affects the viability of commercial because it changes the number of primarily cars that are passing by those future commercial areas. And businesses, especially those larger anchor tenants, are going to rely on pass-by traffic to make their businesses succeed and increase exposure. Development feasibility is also looking at infrastructure cost, which varies greatly between the 4 scenarios, the timing and how phasing is affected, and fire life safety considerations. And the last is equity. So we're trying to understand who benefits from the different scenarios and who is impacted by them and in what ways. So in the in the evaluation memorandum, all of the methodologies for each of these metrics is laid out in detail. So this presentation isn't going to get into a very fine level of detail, but we'd be happy to answer any questions that you had about any one metric. Next slide, please. This slide is summarizing the findings of the evaluation. This isn't meant to be comprehensive by any means. Again, we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Scenario 1 stood out to the project team. It really set itself apart because it has the primarily the lowest cost and the least impact to natural resources. Scenario 1 is the option that does not extend Tile Flat Road. So it has the least number of stream crossings and the least amount of impervious roadway area, which translates to primarily lower cost. So the cost of scenario 1 is estimated at $18.5 million to develop the River Terrace 2.0 network. And since scenario 1 relies on the extension of Mountainside Way, or that segment A, to form the backbone of the network, it keeps vehicle traffic internal to the neighborhood primarily for residents, but that also means that regional travelers are kept on the arterial network where they are best suited, which means that those regional travelers are passing by the future commercial areas and supporting viability. Within the neighborhood with fewer vehicles, this means that the analysis shows roads are safer, noise is less, and greenhouse gas emissions are lower as well. Scenario 1 also performs best to very slightly reduce the overall number of cars on the surrounding arterial network compared to other scenarios. This is a slight negative 0.5% impact to the network to have a small decrease there. But it also performs best for climate resilience metrics as well, related to greenhouse gases, impacts to natural resources, and less impervious area. Scenarios 2, 3, and 4 all share a common thread that they did show improved connectivity for vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians when compared to Scenario 1. However, Scenario 1 did provide good connectivity. It's just that Scenarios 2, 3, and 4 did provide additional options for all modes of travel. However, these enhanced connectivity benefits, they would not actually be felt until the network is fully built out. So if you recall from Scenarios 2, 3, and 4, there are areas that cross outside of the urban growth boundary for each of the 3 scenarios. And since there's no direct way of constructing a road in those areas and funding has not been identified, the enhanced connectivity benefits of Scenarios 2, 3, and 4 would not be realized for many years. The additional stream crossings and the bridges needed to cross those and the additional impervious roadway area would cause significant increases in costs when compared to Scenario 1. So Scenario 1, again, was $18.5 million as an estimate. Scenario 3 was the second least expensive at $33 million, but that's still a $14.5 million increase compared to 1. Scenario 2 almost doubles the cost compared to Scenario 1 at $37.5 million, and Scenario 4 nearly triples the cost. It goes up to $52 million, which is an increase of $33.5 million when compared to Scenario 1. So in addition to increased cost, Scenarios 2, 3, and 4 also show significantly higher impacts to natural resources. Again, we have stream crossings and a wetland that would be impacted by these roadway extensions. And vehicle trips for regional travelers also increases both internal to the River Terrace 2.0 network and slightly on the arterial network surrounding the area as well. And it doesn't provide much time saved. So the analysis did assess travel time for regional travelers and found that only 28 seconds would be saved. This is about half a light cycle, so it wouldn't really be a noticeable change for regional travelers experiencing traffic congestion as well. And the increased network options that are provided by Scenarios 2, 3, and 4, they cause an induced demand effect, which means that there are more cars using the network overall, and it does cause arterial operations to worsen in some locations, even though there's relief felt in small ways in other parts of the network. So the impacts of Scenarios 2, 3, and 4 would be felt differently across different community members. So for residents, more vehicles traveling through the neighborhood would mean that there are greater safety risks for them and greater exposure to greenhouse gas emissions. It also might mean that there are higher costs of housing, since there would be higher costs for developers to build more required roads, bridges for those stream crossings. It's possible that those added costs could be passed down to residents through the price of housing. Regional travelers, on the other hand, they would have 1 or 2 more route options for their commutes, but they would also be experiencing slightly more cars during their commutes overall for Scenarios 2, 3, and 4, and they wouldn't feel any noticeable relief from traffic that they're experiencing today. And for developers, they would bear the brunt of the increased infrastructure costs, which could not only lead to development phasing issues, but again, that added cost could be passed on to residents through the price of housing or commercial spaces. It also means that more land dedication would be required to build out a larger street network, which would reduce the amount of land available to develop housing, commercial services, parks, and other facilities. Next slide, please. Based on the findings of the evaluation, the staff and consultant team came to a consensus, and we are recommending that Scenario 1 be used to develop the final street network for River Terrace 2.0. We came to this conclusion after reviewing the full analysis based on the findings that scenario 1 provides the greatest overall benefit, and it does provide good connectivity for all modes of transportation. And it also carries the lowest costs and impacts to natural resources. Hearing from the community. Staff shared this recommendation with the Planning Commission during the July 7th meeting, and we asked that the Planning Commission provide informal feedback on the different scenarios. And of the 8 planning commissioners who were present, 6 of them identified scenario 1 as their preference. They mentioned safety, community input, and primary factors that fed into their recommendation. Three commissioners did note that there are connectivity benefits associated with scenario 3. One of those commissioners did identify scenario 3 as their preference for that reason. But after discussing further, the other 2 commissioners noted that the added costs and natural resource impacts associated with scenario 3, in addition to the challenges and uncertainty of delivering that future connection, made them choose scenario 1 as their preference. And lastly, one commissioner voiced support for scenarios 2 and 4 that extend Tile Flat Road because of the additional route options. Next slide, please. This evening, staff is requesting that City Council provide direction on a preferred transportation network scenario based on the findings of this Tile Flat extension scenarios evaluation. And once Council is able to provide direction on a preferred scenario, the River Terrace 2.0 team can move forward to finalize the street network. And this will allow us to begin work on the Transportation System Plan Amendment, which has some critical deadlines this summer and early fall. And it also allows us to get started on the equitable finance strategy. So this concludes staff's presentation. Assistant Director Warren and I are happy to answer any questions that you have, and thank you for your feedback.
Thank you. That was a long presentation with a lot of really good information on it, because it's a really important discussion that we're having. Questions? Councillor Schlack.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for the information you presented this evening. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to express my support for scenario 1 for the reasons that were stated. And I think, you know, I attended the Planning Commission meeting, and I thought they brought up a number of really great points that were consistent with what you presented this evening. Also, I really enjoyed the evaluation matrix. It was a very, very easy way for me, at least, to understand all the different factors and variables that were considered in making that recommendation. And when I skimmed through, I was like, oh yeah, this seems like a slam dunk, obviously scenario 1. But that's just me. So wanted to put that out there this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you for the in-depth presentation, very helpful. I too appreciate the evaluation summary. Wasn't sure about the coloring because it seemed to definitely dictate kind of the direction, and maybe that was the purpose. Do you have a question on the intersection capacity with regards to the evaluation summary? There's scenario 1, 2, 3, 4. Scenario 2 is listed as being not deep red, but maybe a lighter red. But it says in essence the same thing that scenario 4 said, minus and Perth. So I was wondering why that was red. And I know you have the slide up. If you want to go to that, it might be helpful as well for the audience.
Yeah, I actually don't know if I have a helpful slide to answer this question. It could be.
The slide was, it was, if you want to just point to what I'm looking at, I don't know what the page would be. But you've got in the slide presentation, you actually had that evaluation summary. If you wanted
yes,
to bring it
thank
up.
you so much. Can you please go back, I think, 2 slides? Is that the correct one?
Keep going.
One more? Okay. I think that one might be it. So you're talking about the intersection capacity
Yeah, it's the
metric?
color-coded. And
Okay.
you passed over it. It's the evaluation summary, and you said this won't be helpful. So you went to the evaluation. So if you go down, I believe it's, unless I imagined, didn't anyone else see that? It was there. I mean, it's the evaluation summary that is in the public records.
Oh, okay, great. Carol, do you have one of the PDFs available? It's the evaluation summary,
here.
and I think you'd go down towards page 4.
It's in our public I'm on looking at this online, so I assume it's got to be in your presentation.
I think your question is why is scenario 2 red and the other 2 are yellow in this case, correct?
Correct.
So we should talk a little
There's
bit
3
about...
yellows and 1 red.
Right, so we should talk a little bit about what intersection capacity means. So typically intersections are evaluated based on something called a volume to capacity ratio. And the model is run, and in the model, you'll get this ratio of how much volume is going through the intersection versus the capacity that it has. For Washington County, a intersection that exceeds 0.99 in that ratio is considered failing. So what the model showed is that essentially, regardless of the scenario, all of the intersections around here are failing, and it's just a matter of degree to which they're failing. And so the thing that distinguishes scenarios 1, 3, and 4 is that in 1, 3, and 4, there's one intersection that exceeds the mobility target, and in scenario 2, there are 2 intersections that exceed the mobility target. And if you look at the intersection capacity not the evaluation matrix, but the actual methodology, it actually goes into more detail about what the figures are for each of those intersections. And again, anything above 0.99 is considered a failing intersection. In all 4 scenarios, the intersection of Shoals and Roy Rogers is failing. So in scenario 1, it's 1.16. In scenario 2, it's 1.21. It actually goes up. Scenario 3, it's 1.16. And scenario 4, it's 1.21.
Great, thank you. Not helpful, I guess, in a way that they're all failing, but completely understand. Thank you for explaining that methodology. And then also, on the last slide, it said equitable finance strategy. We seem to use the word equitable a lot for many different scenarios. So what do you mean by equitable finance strategy?
I'll start this one, and Assistant Director Warren can fill in the gap since he was involved earlier on in the process to develop the scope for that strategy. So there are a lot of different funding sources that are going to come into play as we think about how River Terrace 2.0 could develop. And equitable here is meant to be explicit. We hope to craft that funding strategy to consider the broad range of housing needs within the community, and there are different ways that different fee structures can be either tiered or shifted from the status quo that we typically see today to account for more equitable outcomes, such as different fees can be related to the number of bedrooms in a house or how large the house is, understanding that smaller houses or houses with fewer bedrooms would be lower costs and might be more marketed towards individuals with lower income. So we're really trying to understand how different fees can affect the future price of things like housing in the neighborhood, and being very mindful about developing a street fee structure that takes that into account. Is there anything else?
That's exactly it. That's the equity that we're talking about. And I'll give just a really quick example of where inequity appears in the way that we finance infrastructure. If you are building a single detached unit of any kind, you will pay the system development charges for a single detached unit. So it could be a 4,000 square foot home, or it could be a 900 square foot home. The system development charges are flat, and they're based on just that unit type. What that means is that the proportion of the cost of that unit that is attributable to system development charges is much, much higher for that small unit, and it has a disproportionate impact on the eventual cost of that unit to the purchaser. So by scaling or tiering system development charges, we are more accurately aligning our impact fees, system development charges, with the presumed impact of the household that they have. So a 4,000 square foot house with 4 bedrooms, you would assume has more drivers, more park users. A 900 square foot home that might have 1 or 2 occupants might have fewer road users, fewer users of parks. And so that's what we talk about when we are talking about right sizing those fees to make them equitable.
Counselor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. So the difference between scenario 1 and 3 is that the additional section C. So section C presumably make it more connected, but why, according to my table, why does the travel time go up when you add a section C? I just want to understand why that is.
So based on the analysis, if you add segment C to the mix, which is scenario 3, if we're looking at the travel time metric, which is looking at how long it takes regional travelers to pass through the network, C actually causes it to go down ever so slightly, just 2 seconds compared to a no-build scenario, while scenario 1 actually causes a very slight improved time savings of 11 seconds saved. So C doesn't, at least from a travel time perspective for regional travelers, it does not cause an increased amount of time, but it does cause other things like increased vehicles on the network compared to 1.
My question is, I assume C will actually decrease travel time, but it went up. So I'm just wondering why that happened.
Well, part of that is that you're looking, we have to look at origin and destination, right? So if someone is traveling, let's say, from somewhere in Beaverton to somewhere in Sherwood, having C as an option versus Roy Rogers, which would be the baseline option, traveling that distance south on that piece is not going to make an appreciable difference in your travel that is further south, right? It's a matter of which route are you taking that is largely the same distance, right? It's just a matter of, are you on the arterial here or are you on the arterial here, right? And it gets back to that question of, in the north-south connectivity question, you know, we know that there are constraints on north-south travel in Washington County for sure, and the reality is that there's not a lot of alternative routes because we only have so many crossings of the Tualatin River, and we only have so many major roadways that connect. So eventually someone is going to end up on Roy Rogers who's making that regional trip. Does that make sense?
And that makes sense. And that just further illustrate the point that just because the road is more connected doesn't mean it will be faster in terms of travel time. So with that, I support scenario 1. So thank you.
Let me ask the question, does anybody think something other than scenario 1 is the way to go? Counselor Gattusi?
I don't think that something, I mean, I think that really this is the illusion of choice. Options 2 through 4 aren't really feasible, doable. They don't improve anything. They're significantly more expensive and they destroy natural resources. So it's not like we have a choice.
I think you can make a choice. I don't know that it would be a good one, but it is a choice based on what the community says their priorities are and our dollar constrictions. But point taken. Do you feel like you have the feedback you need?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much.
Okay. Does anyone want to take a break? I know several of you have gotten up, so let's take a 5-minute break and then we can come back. And the next item on our agenda is a briefing on Tigard Home, which is housing opportunity, mobility, and enterprise. And we will welcome Associate Planner Miller. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Trinity Miller. I was previously the associate planner, but as of yesterday, I'm your housing planner. Yay. For the city of Tigard. So this evening, I will provide a briefing on phase 2 of the Tigard Home project. And in this briefing, I will reintroduce the Tigard Home project itself, as well as review takeaways from recent community engagement efforts. Next slide, please. Awesome. So, as noted, Tigard Home stands for Housing, Opportunity, Mobility, and Enterprise. This is a long-range planning project, and when complete, the project will deliver policy and code amendment recommendations for Tigard's existing residential neighborhoods. This project was awarded $95,000 of grant funds from Metro to support the interactive community engagement plan and engage with persons traditionally not reached through long-range planning processes. A successful project will facilitate flourishing, self-contained communities where housing, economic, and entertainment options are all easily accessible to a variety of mobility types such as walking, biking, and rolling. We're seeking community input to determine how to provide community members with these options at a neighborhood-appropriate scale. The tangible deliverable of this project is a set of policy and development code amendment recommendations to be considered by City Council for adoption, and any final policy changes are at the discretion of City Council. The intangible outcomes of this project will be the result of meaningful, robust public engagement, and this will include building public trust in planning processes, as well as educating and seeking to empower the public about planning issues and their relevance to one's life. Next slide, please. So why are we doing this project? Public engagement for long-range planning projects in Tigard has consistently indicated that residents desire more amenities within walking distance of their home, more freedom regarding how they use their home or property, more straightforward processes for sharing what they make with their neighbors, and more attractive and safe pedestrian connections. Next slide. So how do we become a complete neighborhood? As seen in this zoning map, much of the city of Tigard is residential use. We refer to the vast residential areas seen in the yellow on the map as our sea of yellow. And while this zoning strategy has provided plenty of opportunities for community members to dwell in Tigard, it has limited the ability of these communities to become truly complete neighborhoods. Furthermore, Tigard's residential zones do not have walkable access to commercial amenities, work, or services. Tigard Home Solutions will allow residential neighborhoods to carry some of the job's burden by exploring ways that commercial activity can appropriately fit at a neighborhood scale. And through robust community engagement, Tigard Home aims to allow for complete residential communities that maximize opportunity for community members while mitigating for potential nuisances and hazards. Next slide. The goal of this project aims to bring more nearby shops and services to existing neighborhoods, expand home and property use options, simplify neighborhood business rules, create safer, more connected walking paths, and reduce climate impacts through reduction of vehicle miles traveled within our community. Next slide. To effectively communicate the project goals, we've identified what's outside the scope of work to help reduce misunderstandings about the project outcomes. The Tigard Home project is split into 2 phases, and the first phase of the project focused on urban agriculture and livestock regulations. Code updates addressed in phase 1, such as the urban agriculture and livestock section, will not be reevaluated during phase 2. Additionally, Tigard Made identified code-based solutions that prioritized job-dense industries with career pathways in our employment lands. The Tigard Made project updated policy and code in Tigard's employment and industrial areas, and this is also outside the scope of Tigard Home. And finally, amendments to plan districts such as the Tigard Triangle and Washington Square, as well as mixed-use zone districts, are not included, although emergency uses and needs could be addressed if needed. Next slide. Previous home considerations and briefings brought to this council focused on urban agriculture and livestock regulations. Following the Urban Agriculture Code adoption, staff began community outreach efforts for Phase 2 of the home project. The Tigard Home project did experience delays due to key staff turnover. Additionally, the project team evaluators felt that the initial bids received for the community engagement scope of work did not meet expectations to successfully complete the project. Therefore, the first Community Ambassadors RFP was canceled, and before releasing a second RFP, the city re-examined alternative engagement strategies to accomplish the scope of work. A second RFP was released in March of 2025 with a successful bid awarded in April 2025. And during the next year of community engagement, staff will return to the Planning Commission and City Council to present briefings with updates on the community engagement efforts and input. So additional briefings are expected in fall 2025, early 2026, and summer 2026. After robust community engagement in late 2026, staff plans to develop and bring home solutions for adoption to the City Council. Next slide. Robust community engagement will be the core of the Tigard Home project. We're focused on people who live in Tigard and want community engagement to reflect the diversity of our community. The grant funding that we've received enhances our ability to make sure home solutions are truly built by all community members, not just those who speak English or feel naturally comfortable being a part of government processes. Grant funding from Metro, as well as the city's committed funding, will support creative engagement, and funding will be used to overcome the barriers such as language and access to government processes. The engagement plan uses multiple strategies to connect with our community. Engagement strategies will include hosting tables, pop-up events in our neighborhoods, community-based organization outreach, and hosting community dinners. We have consistently heard from residents, community-based organizations, and educational resources that we need to be prepared to have larger discussions and spend time building trust before historically marginalized populations will be willing or able to talk about project-specific issues. So Tigard Home is taking this approach. Next slide. The city has contracted with 2 consultants to execute this engagement plan. Zan Associates was selected as the community engagement consultant based on their proposed engagement strategy, as well as their experience using communication strategies to foster social change and empower historically marginalized groups. And First 40 Feet was selected as the urban design storyteller consultant. As an urban design storyteller, First 40 Feet will create graphic visualizations of the potential Tigard Home solutions. Next slide, please. Thank you. So next, we will review takeaways from the recent community development get-together community dinner. This was held on Wednesday, June 18th at Universal Plaza. The get-together kicked off a robust community engagement plan that will continue for the next year. More than 80 people from across the city attended Wednesday's get-together. During the event, attendees participated in creative engagement activities at 4 stations to provide their input on how they would like to see shops and services in Tigard neighborhoods. And community response so far has been positive and supportive of this project. The goals of this event specifically were to teach community members about Tigard Home's project goals, offer all ages activities for people to get engaged and think about their experiences, needs, and ideas for a thriving Tigard, listen and record to feedback from our community members, and lastly, offer food, drinks, and places to sit throughout the event to ensure all participants were comfortable and felt taken care of. Next slide. Let's look at our project overview. At this station, attendees learned more about Tigard Home. They also placed a sticker on a very large map showing where they live or work in Tigard. Through this activity, we saw that attendees came from all across our city and were not just concentrated in the area where the event was. We also saw the demographics accurately reflected our city's demographics. Next slide. At the Design Your Dream neighborhood station, participants used craft supplies and toys to model their dream neighborhood on table mats. Here, participants answered questions including, when you think about your perfect neighborhood, what does it include? What would make it easier to connect with your neighbors and nearby businesses? And what keeps you from walking or biking to destinations in your neighborhood? We heard through the station that a lack of continuous sidewalk networks and bike lanes, high car speeds, and long distances to services are ubiquitous barriers for people walking and biking to more destinations, as well as connecting with their neighbors. Next slide, please. Next, we'll go over the results from our preference survey. This is the packet that I passed out at the beginning of this presentation, just so you can take a better look at the graphics that are on the slides. At the preference station, precedent images were displayed on large easels showcasing different businesses and services, neighborhood improvements, and design features. Participants placed stickers on the ideas they liked best. Participants also had the option to add sticky notes with additional ideas to the boards. Analysis of the results showed that there were popular ideas within each board. For example, Market Cafe was the most popular suggestion, followed by restaurants at Board 1. Through discussion, we heard that community members are interested in small shops and businesses to visit in leisure time after dinner. People want more services close to home, and especially services that meet their basic needs, such as grocery stores, small corner markets, a year-round farmers market, community centers with class offerings, and even indoor fitness or recreation centers. People also want more varied entertainment and third places that they can get to easily, such as a neighborhood dessert shop. Specifically, ice cream came up a lot. Bakery, food cart pods, cafes with Wi-Fi, movie theaters, bookstores, karaoke bars, small music venue, and more. We had a lot of great feedback at the station. Next slide, please. The second board looked at design features that would fit well for commercial buildings in Tigard neighborhoods. Here we heard that protected outdoor space was the most desired design feature. Similarly, outdoor lighting was also a top desire, followed by storefronts with multifamily housing and active storefronts. We noted little interest in obvious commercial use as the outlier response at this station. And at the third preference survey board, next slide please, we looked at improvements that would make folks more likely to walk or bike in their neighborhood. Here we heard that parks and trails were most popular as the response. This was followed by continuous well-lit sidewalks, then comfort in the landscape, and finally pedestrian crossings and protected bike lanes. Here we heard that public green spaces and multi-use trails are cornerstones of livability and connection in Tigard. People use these to exercise, gather with others, allow their kids to play safely, and connect with other parts of the city. But there's currently not enough and trail networks to go more places. Next slide, please. Finally, the fourth station at our community get-together was the Community Cafe. This offered a space for people to briefly sit down and engage in a one-on-one conversation with a staff person. This was a very popular activity. Participants expressed that they enjoyed the opportunity for a long-form discussion to provide their input and felt that meaningful conversations came from these discussions. Here we learned that people are interested in creative solutions to help residents feel more connected. Some ideas proposed include closing off dead-end streets to traffic and using them as gathering spaces instead, organized neighborhood night outs and other events, smaller lot sizes to be in closer proximity, mixing residential and commercial building uses, and redirection of non-residential traffic from residential streets to allow front yards to be peaceful and safe places for families to hang out. All in all, people want to feel more connected and less reliant on cars in their daily lives, but first they need their solutions and surroundings to make it safe and easy. This was the very first event of a year-long engagement plan, and there will be additional community dinners, discussions with community-based organizations, and pop-up events in our existing neighborhoods. You'll also see our home project team hosting tables at local businesses and events. The community's ideas will help shape the final updates to Tigard's zoning codes and create better neighborhoods for everyone. Next slide, and that will conclude my presentation. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. This is a really cool project, especially being able to see where everyone is putting their stickers and really kind of thinking about what they want in their neighborhood, what they want it to feel like, even what they want it to look like. I thought it was interesting to see what sort of buildings they were after. I wonder what the correlation might be between where they live and what kind of building they were looking for. But I'm glad this project has picked back up because, to be more walkable and accessible, these sorts of things needs to be in people's neighborhoods. What questions do people have? Councillor Shaw?
Thank you so much. Great presentation. And I got to attend the June community night. I went as a Tigard community member, not as a counselor. One thing I did note that was on there quite a bit was parking. And I don't see that anywhere reflected. I have pictures too, but just of sticky notes. In particular, I was talking to one individual, a gentleman who had 2 children. And he's like, I can't walk with them everywhere, so having a place to park and take them to childcare or to the bookstore. But I don't see that reflected in here. But is that a note somewhere? Just want to make sure that we provide some of what the community is interested in.
Absolutely. The notes from the sessions are being summarized, so we do have notes on reflections regarding parking. We'll also further explore nodes and form that will include parking at a later date. This very first event was very high level, just reintroducing the project to our community. So as we progress through our community engagement plan, we'll get more specific.
Great, thank you. And I too was very impressed with the different aspects of what the community wanted. So I think it's going to be a great project, so thank you.
Councillor Gadusi?
It seems this is very much driven by the developers. What are some things that we can do as council specifically to help move forward?
So the Tigard Home project will be driven by our community input specifically. We don't have any options defined at this time. We're truly out here meeting our community where they are to hear what kinds of businesses and services they would like to see and what form that would be. As counselors, once we reach our development code update section, that will be a great opportunity for you all to help us shape our development code to ensure that it facilitates these businesses in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Trinity. Yeah, just want to reiterate Councillor Shaw's request about parking, because as good intention as we want this to be walkable, you did mention there are people who worry about sidewalks. And since we don't have any parking requirement anymore, that's something I really want to see how the city plan to address that issue. Shall this code be issued? And also, your slide mentioned bring solution in fall of 2026, and you also mentioned solution a couple of times. But I just want to reiterate my request when we have the parking discussion is what problem are we to solve? Because if we don't know what problem we're going to solve, how do we know what kind of solution to bring? So if you could articulate a little bit more in the future what problems we're trying to solve with this home project, I would appreciate that. And also, in this sheet, I don't see anything about like personal services like barber or hair salon or a nail salon. Was that an option to the public?
Yes, thank you for your comments. So services are an option that are being considered. If they were left out of this graphic, they will be included in future engagement opportunities.
Okay, and one last thing is obviously, hopefully will be prohibition on any kind of tobacco product like e-cigarette or anything that I do not want to see that at any neighborhood stores or advertisement of them. So that's just my request. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Youth Councillor Hellick?
I was just wondering where we would be able to find the information to get to like surveys and projects and whatever so that we can interact with this project.
Thank you. Great question. So on the City of Tigard's webpage, we do have a webpage specifically for the Tigard Home project. And on that page, there's also an opportunity to sign up for our interested parties list, which will also be notified when new engagement opportunities are happening through our community, as well as any surveys released.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think also potentially if we're not reaching the youth, this would be a great opportunity for you to step in and take it back to the school, but also to maybe TIAC and ask how that network can then talk about this, because this would have a huge impact on our students, right? And the youth in the community, especially those who can't walk and, you know, might want access to these services in the neighborhood. Or can't drive, thank you. Can walk, can't drive. It's getting late, yeah.
Because I know a lot of people who are even in their like junior or senior year who still aren't driving just because they aren't able to.
Yeah.
And so it would be nice to be able to hear their input too.
Yeah. Sounds like a great first assignment for you. Counselor Stack?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to join Councilor Shaw and Councilor Hu on the parking topic. I think that's just a recurring theme with a lot of the development topics that have come up today and in previous meetings. And I'd also like to just take this opportunity to express my kudos to you and the team for the June 18th event. I, like Councilor Shaw, also attended the event. It was very well executed. I learned a lot from it as an attendee, and I look forward to more high-quality events like that being put on us over the course of this project. So thank you for all the great work you all did.
Do you feel like you got the feedback that you need?
Yes, I did. Thank you all very much.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. And thank you for the pictures and to be able to see this visually. We don't have any non-agenda items or an executive session, and we have concluded our agenda, so we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.